Hello and welcome to HSA English Hub. Today we are starting a new set of videos on literary movements and we begin with classicism. The term classicism in general refers to the styles, rules, modes, conventions, themes and sensibilities of the classical authors and their influence on later authors. Now, who are these classical authors? Classical writers are writers of ancient Greece and Rome who were believed to have achieved excellence and established enduring models in all major literary genres. Though there are no clear-cut definitions of the term, we can say that classicism upheld the virtues of formal discipline, impersonality, objectivity, rationality, and the shunning of the ambiguous, imaginative, eccentric, impulsive, emotional, and self-indulgent. Classicism placed importance on wholeness or unity of a work. The work of art has coherence and is without irrelevant elements or open-ended conclusions. A critic who places importance to classicism is likely to be a conserver of the canons of art. The word classicism may convey two ideas for us. We identify it as the literature of both Greece and Rome. But nowadays, the word is also attributed to signify the status of a work upon which there is a general agreement. Classicism is generally associated with several major periods in history, including the Golden Age of Greece, the age of Cicero and Augustus in Rome, and the Enlightenment periods of France, England, and Germany. The common themes we find in works of classical importance are a general interest in history, adherence to rules and orders, and a preference of reason over passion. The literary styles dominant in classical works are pastorals, tragedies, and epics. The origins of the movement are traceable to ancient Greece. The ancient Greek literature includes writers like Aeschylus, Euripides, Homer, Aristotle, and Sophocles. Throughout our history, we can see several periods of distinct classical revival in the histories of Rome, France, Germany, and England. It is the scholars of Alexandria who invented the classic status of ancient Greek literature. They defined earlier Greek literature in a set of formal rules, tried to use them as the basis of their own work, and reinforced the classic status of Greek literature by imitating it. Historians divide the classical movement in Rome into two periods: the age of Cicero from 80 to 43 BC and the age of Augustus from 37 BC to 14 AD. Greek literature was the model for Roman writings in prose, poetry, as well as drama, and the works themselves were often composed in both Greek and Latin. Virgil and Cicero are identified as the significant literary figures of the periods. Virgil's Aeneid is a representative work of classicism. Cicero was a prolific author of speeches, philosophical treatises, and rhetorical treatises, and was influenced by the Greek philosophical schools. Another important Roman classical writer is Seneca. Seneca imitated Greek tragedians. His plays were chiefly reworkings of Euripides' dramas and also of works of Aeschylus and Sophocles. His many famous works include Brutus, Cato the Elder, On Old Age. Now coming to France. In the 1600s and 1700s, France witnessed a resurrection of classical values and style, mainly as a result of Renaissance. The French classicists emphasized on reason and intellect. Classical themes and motives were adopted. In addition to drama, the French were also noted for their use of satire. Voltaire's Candide is considered one of the best examples of satire. French intellectual René Descartes emphasized the importance of knowledge based on hypothesis or theory rather than experiment or experience. Pierre Corneille is considered the creator of French classical tragedy. Take a look at his chief works. Jean Racine is considered the most accomplished practitioner of French classicism. Racine consciously modeled his works after the Greek and Latin classics of the ancient world, particularly the works of the classic Greek tragedians Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. His play Andromache draws on classical characters and themes. The drama of Racine and others strongly influenced the English neoclassical period. Scaliger's Poetica greatly influenced French classicism. It is built on Aristotle's theory of literature. One of the most influential works in France during this period was Boileau's Art Poetique, modeled on Horace's Ars Poetica. It set out rules for the composition of poetry in the classical tradition. There was a revival of interest in classical themes in drama, fiction, and verse in the 20th century, especially in French drama and the plays of Sartre, Cocteau, Giraud, and Anouilh. Coming to England, looking right from the Renaissance period, we have writers who were exposed to the classical works of Greece and Rome and adapted them to English literature. Horace's remarks on decorum, appropriateness of language and style, application of action to character, and his observations on the need for excellence in craftsmanship were analyzed by commentators in the 16th century. The most popular example would be Sidney's An Apology for Poetry. Aristotle's theories of imitation and his views of tragedy and epic influenced many writers during the 16th century. Renaissance dramatists subscribed to Aristotle's theories of dramatic design as explained in his Poetics. Also, Classicism dominated English literature during the Restoration Age, and we named the period as Neoclassicism. Major English writers who followed classical rules were Dryden, Swift, Pope, Addison, and Dr. Johnson. We know them as the neoclassical writers. We'll learn more about the neoclassical movement in another video. Classicism in the 20th century can be seen in the literary works and critical theory of T.S. Eliot. In his 1932 work, Sweeney Agonistes, a poetic play, Eliot tried to resurrect the comic drama of Aristophanes. His play, Murder in the Cathedral, about the life and death of Thomas Becket, integrated classical tragic elements. Eliot's literary criticism is extensive, including the Sacred Wood essays on poetry and criticism, the use of poetry and the use of criticism, and notes towards the definition of culture. In various essays, Eliot praised the poetic drama of the Jacobean stage and the works of Dryden. In his poetry and drama, he analyzed the difficulties in trying to revive poetic drama for the modern stage. Classical elements can also be seen in the use of mythology in various works. We already know Eliot and his Wasteland. Other prominent works are James Joyce's Ulysses, W.B. Yeats, who constructed his own systematic mythology based on historical, astrological, and occult material. His myths consisted of the phases of the moon, the great wheel, and the gyres, as seen in his works A Vision, The Second Coming, and Byzantium. Eugene O'Neill, the Nobel-winning American playwright, also used myths in his 1931 trilogy, Morning Becomes Electra, which is based on Oresteia of Aeschylus. Now, Germany. In the 18th century, classical culture became a subject of great interest. German educational institutions offered courses in classical literature, history, and philosophy. Great intellectuals emerged, inspired by classical ideals. There also was an interest in a German past that was also evident in the spirit. During this time period, classical and romantic literature flourished side by side. The influence of classicism is seen in German writers like Winckelmann, Lessing, Goethe, Schiller, and Hölderlin. Goethe's first a significant work in the true mode of a classic is called a secular tragedy that meets Aristotelian standards of purging fear and pity. Other classical elements like traditional mythology, mysticism, and religious imagery are found in the work. Let us also look at a few famous quotes by a few authors on what a classic is. T.S. Eliot, in his essay What is a Classic, published in 1945, argues that a classic can occur only when a civilization is mature, when a language and a literature are mature, and it must be the work of a mature mind. Matthew Arnold, in the study of poetry, says that the true and right meaning of the word classical, is that the work in question belongs to the class of the very best. Frank Kermode, a British literary critic, in his work The Classic, published in 1975, written as a response to Eliot's What is a Classic, discusses the works of Virgil, Spencer, Marvell, Milton, Hawthorne, Emily Bronte, Barthes, and Foucault. He answers questions of reading, authorial intention, and control, and earning a place in the canon of classic literature. That's all for today. See you again next week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.